If something inside you shifted while listening, if you felt that quiet click of recognition when I talked about staring at that screen at 3 in the morning, then the real work is just beginning. This audio gives you the why. The full digital book gives you the how, including the complete founder to architect scorecard, a private framework I use with my clients to diagnose exactly where they are the bottleneck in their own companies. It's the tool that was not included here. The link is the first one in the description below this video. Tomorrow you will forget you ever felt this click. Tonight you will not. Don't let that feeling fade. I know how hard this is. That night, smelling the stale coffee and staring at that flatlining chart, I felt a profound sense of loss. A loss of the identity I had worked so hard to build. The hero, the visionary, the founder. You felt like a hero at the beginning of this, and now you see that hero is the problem. But what I've learned is that you don't actually lose that identity. You transform it. The visionary energy you once used to create a product, you now use to design an organization. The passion you once poured into a single idea, you now pour into the people who will generate hundreds of ideas. You stop being the star player, and you become the one who builds the championship team. This is the work. It is the hardest and most rewarding transformation of your professional life. Now, go build something that can outlast you. They debated fiercely, with the head of manufacturing arguing a point that would make his own team's life harder, but would benefit the company as a whole. They made a collective decision, and it was a better decision than I could have ever made alone. That is the proof. That is the end goal. To build an organization that is smarter, more resilient, and more capable than its founder. Chapter 9. The title of this chapter is Build What Outlasts You. So here we are. You've heard the brutal choice between growing and scaling. You've seen the psychological traps that turn your greatest strengths into weaknesses. You have the tools to build a decision machine and a functional organization to house it. Choosing to scale forces an organization to change its very DNA. It forces you to change, to let go, to trust the system you've built more than you trust yourself. You train your managers to treat their internal and external customers with equal importance. This forces them to think horizontally. Finally, you insist on a culture of open and constructive conflict. Dissent is not just encouraged, it is required. You celebrate the manager who raises an objection on behalf of another team. This leads to some fiery meetings, but it leads to calm, committed execution afterwards. Let me bring it full circle. Just last quarter, my current company faced a high-stakes crisis. A supply chain disruption threatened our biggest product launch. The old Alex Thorne, the founder, would have jumped in, pulled an all-nighter, and made a heroic, gut-based call. The taste of blood would have been in my mouth. But I didn't. The system did. The cross-departmental team I described earlier convened. They analyzed the data. Their first loyalty can no longer be to their department. It must be to the enterprise. This feels like a betrayal of their people. And that quiet resentment it can cause is a slow-acting poison in your culture. So you have to teach them a new way. First, you demand enterprise commitment. You make it explicit. At the beginning of every single management meeting, you go around the room and have each person verbally promise to put the needs of the company before the needs of their team for the duration of that meeting. It feels awkward at first. Then it becomes a ritual. Then it becomes a mindset. Next, you force them to identify their internal customers. Your IT team's internal customer is the marketing team who needs the website updated. They are the sales team who needs the CRM to work flawlessly. You'll see the roles your company is missing: a talent manager, a dedicated customer care lead. You can pencil them into your new functional chart. You're no longer just assigning titles. You're designing a nervous system for your entire organization, one that actually works. Chapter 8. The title of this chapter is First Loyalty to the Enterprise. Your managers are good, they're loyal, They take responsibility for their people, and they hit their team's goals. They are masters of what we call vertical management. They manage down. And in a scaling company, that is only half the job. In fact, it's the less important half. To scale, you need your leaders to master lateral management. They must have the ability to make decisions based on what will best serve the entire organization, even if, especially if, it puts their own team at a disadvantage. You'll find your lead engineer spending half her day acting as a customer support rep because the sales team isn't capturing the right technical details up front. That's a broken information flow that costs you thousands of dollars a week in wasted talent. Next, clarify the chain of command with ruthless simplicity. Does every single employee report to one and only one manager? Any ambiguity here creates chaos. Then you map the flow of data. Where does critical information, customer feedback, sales numbers, production metrics originate? And what is the most direct, automated path to get it to the people who need it to make decisions? Is it a shared drive, a dashboard, a mandatory weekly report? You must build these data pipelines like you're building an aqueduct for a city. They are just as vital. When you're done with this process, you will see the gaps. Pull up your company's organizational chart. Go ahead, I'll wait. Look at that neat collection of boxes and lines. It looks so clean, so logical. Now, I want you to know, that chart is a lie. It tells you who reports to whom. It doesn't tell you how work actually gets done. It doesn't show you how information, the lifeblood of your decision machine, actually flows. In most scaling companies, information doesn't flow. It gets trapped. It gets lost in email chains and siloed departments. You need to throw that chart away and build a new one, a functional org chart. And you build it by becoming an anthropologist in your own company. Start by examining what your employees actually do, not what their job description says they do. Shadow them. Ask them who they need information from to do their job and who they give information to. Don't make assumptions. You will be shocked. We forced her team to dedicate time to studying sales data, researching competitor pricing, and consulting with suppliers before making a choice. The result? The implementation of their decisions became dramatically faster because they spotted all the potential problems beforehand. Fourth, and finally, view data as sacred. No more anecdotal feedback. The phrase, "my friend said they'd love a cinnamon blend," was banned. Every decision had to be guided by real data. Sales reports, customer surveys, A/B test results. Assumptions were forbidden. Evidence was required. Within 6 months, Sarah was working 40 hours a week. The company was growing faster than ever. She was no longer designing coffee bags. She was designing the company. She had stopped being a coffee roaster and had become an architect. Chapter 7. The title of this chapter is Your Org Chart is a Lie. First, teams make decisions, not individuals. This is non-negotiable. For Sarah, this meant creating a new product team with people from marketing, roasting, and finance. No new coffee blend or bag design saw the light of day without that team's collective approval. No more solo genius decisions. Second, distinguish between making a decision and implementing it. In a startup, the person who decides is usually the person who does. In a scaling company, that's a disaster. The new product team's job was to decide on the new holiday blend. The head roster's job was to implement that decision perfectly. Third, you must slow down the decision-making process. This sounds counterintuitive, but it's critical. Sarah was used to making decisions on the fly. Better to step out of the office for a few hours than to shower it with molten lava because you're bored with a spreadsheet. Chapter 6. The title of this chapter is The Decision Machine. High-quality, team-based decision-making. It sounds like a ridiculous acronym from a government manual, but it is the secret to scaling. It's the engine that will replace your gut instinct. Let me tell you about Sarah. She founded a booming artisanal coffee roastery. The smell of her beans was heavenly. And she was drowning in her own success. She was personally approving every new bag design. She was tasting every single batch. She was working 70 hours a week, and the company's growth had flatlined. She was the company. Her personal stake was her own sanity, and she was losing it. We didn't start with strategy. We started by building her a decision machine. It has 4 core components. 6 months later, that supplier went under and took our $1 million prepayment with them. The lesson was burned into my soul. My gut was not just wrong, it was arrogant. You have to manage your own volatility. You have to build an emotional airlock, a ritual you perform to transition from your freewheeling, creative self into the disciplined, focused leader your company now needs. For some, it's listening to a specific podcast on the way to work. For me, it's a 30-second pause before I walk into the office, where I literally imagine myself taking off the founder hat and putting on the architect hat. What will your airlock be? You have to find an outlet for that visionary energy. Advise a new startup. Take a creative retreat. Go build something with your hands on the weekend. This frustration makes you your own saboteur. You get impatient waiting for the systems to yield results, so you dismantle them. You override a team's carefully considered decision because you have a brilliant new idea in the shower. You become a source of chaos in the very system you're trying to build for stability. That brilliant, on-the-spot decision, it cost me my first company. It was a $1 million mistake. My team presented data on a supplier contract. The numbers were clear. It was a bad deal. But I had a good feeling about the supplier. I knew him personally. My gut told me it was the right move. I overruled them in the boardroom. The tension in that room was electric. It was the moment they stopped seeing me as a leader and started seeing me as an obstacle. The silence that followed my decree was louder than any argument. And finally, you fine-tune your new intuition. Not by making decisions yourself, but by staying relentlessly informed about the decisions your team is making, and, most important, the outcomes of those decisions. This is how you evolve. You let go of the need to be the hero who makes the call. You become the architect who builds the system that produces the right call every single time. Chapter 5. The title of this chapter is Learn to Love Boring. There's no easy way to break this to you. Scaling is boring. It's repetitive, it's administrative, it's endless meetings about process optimization and data review. It's the opposite of the entrepreneurial thrill you live for. Freedom is your drug. It's why you struck out on your own. But freedom is the natural enemy of scaling. And when you, the visionary entrepreneur, are denied your freedom, you are likely to explode. Your company has outgrown your gut. You're no longer making $10,000 bets. You're making $10 million bets, and your gut is not a reliable financial advisor. You have to retrain your instincts. This means committing to a new set of personal rules. First, you must always assume you don't know everything. Your job is no longer to have the answers, but to make sure the best answers are found. Then, always assume a decision will be better if other people have input. Always ask yourself, who is the best person to advise me on this? Not the most convenient, the best. Next, you must treat data like a sacred text. Diligently store it. Make it easily retrievable. It is your shield against making rash, emotional decisions. And this is the hardest one. You must delegate decision-making as much as possible. Your goal is to make yourself progressively less necessary. And they did it all wrong. The founder's visceral, top-down management style created an operational nightmare. The sound in their warehouses wasn't efficiency, it was chaos. He made huge, gut-based bets. A $1 billion investment in automated warehouses before they had proven the demand. A breakneck expansion into 26 cities at once. The stakes weren't just the founder's reputation, it was the jobs of thousands of employees and the trust of their investors. Every decision was made from the gut, from the top. The data screamed for caution. The team on the ground warned of the logistical chaos. But the vision was everything. The result? One of the most spectacular dot-com flameouts in history. They had the capital, they had the idea, but they didn't have the system. They were trying to build a national empire with the same instincts used to run a corner store. First, the benchmark. What are you measuring? Pick one. Second, the market segment. Where will you play? Be precise. Third, the time frame. Is this a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan? And finally, the quantifiable goal. How much? An example for a client of mine, Cameron. Over the next 3 years, we will scale Cameron's cafes by opening 6 new cafes across Texas. That's it. Clear, measurable, unambiguous. If you cannot express your own scale vision in a single, measurable sentence like that, you don't have one. You just have a dream, and dreams don't scale. Chapter 4. The title of this chapter is The Graveyard of Vision. If you want to see the graveyard of visionary companies, look at the history of Webvan. In the late 90s, they had it all. A brilliant vision, groceries delivered to your door, massive funding, a charismatic founder. They were going to change the world. This is a cruel trick of the mind where people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. As a founder, you were an expert at the startup game, but scaling is a new game. You are, by definition, a novice. But your past success creates a powerful illusion of competence. This makes you dismiss expert advice, ignore data that contradicts your gut, and centralize decision-making around the least experienced person in the room for this specific challenge, which is you. We worship the myth of the visionary leader. It's a beautiful lie that's about to cost you everything. To fight back, you need a weapon. That weapon is a scale vision. It's a short, brutally specific statement that becomes your true north, a guide that is immune to your brain's biases. It's not a fuzzy mission statement. It's a mathematical formula for your ambition. It has 4 parts. 2 cognitive biases are at work, acting like saboteurs in your head. First is confirmation bias. Your brain actively seeks out information that confirms what you already believe. In the startup phase, this was a superpower. It gave you the irrational self-belief to ignore the doubters and push through impossible odds. But now, it's a blindfold. When you're trying to scale, you need to see the cold, hard truth, especially when it's ugly. But your brain will subconsciously filter the data. It will amplify the one positive comment from a customer and ignore the 97 support tickets about a recurring bug. It will hear praise from your team louder than their legitimate concerns. Your brain wants to prove you're still the genius who had the original idea. Second, and more dangerous, is the Dunning-Kruger effect. The new work is methodical. It's disciplined. It can feel boring. And your brain, hardwired for the battlefield, will fight you every step of the way. It will crave the chaos. It will look for fires to put out. It will whisper that all this planning, this data analysis, this delegating is a waste of your time. It will tell you to just grab your sword and charge. That instinct is the enemy now. You have to thank it for its service, and then you have to fire it. Think about it. What is the one firefight you were secretly thrilled to handle this month? The one that made you feel essential and heroic. That thrill is the sound of your old identity fighting for its life. Chapter 3. The title of this chapter is Your Brain is a Liar. Let's talk about why your brain, the very organ that produced your brilliant idea, becomes dangerously unreliable in a complex scaling environment. He had to design systems, repeatable processes, laws that would function long after he was gone. It was a painful transformation. Many historians argue he never fully made it. This is the exact transformation required of you. Your company's startup phase was a battlefield. Your instincts, your ability to make quick decisions with incomplete data, your sheer force of will. These were your weapons. They kept you alive. They brought you victory. But scaling is not the battlefield. Scaling is Rome. It's the Senate. It's architecture. It requires a completely different mindset. The star player has to become the general manager. The guerrilla fighter must become the logistics officer. The brilliant ER surgeon who thrives on triage and high-stakes improvisation must become the hospital administrator, focused on budgets, systems, and protocols. The thrill is gone. The adrenaline fades. It is a deliberate and often ruthless choice. Chapter 2. The title of this chapter is The General in the Senate. Think of the Roman general Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a brilliant battlefield commander. In the chaos of war, he was a genius, decisive, instinctive. He could read the shifting tides of a fight and make split-second, life-or-death decisions. He was the ultimate startup founder, thriving in chaos, leading from the front. But then the war ended. Sulla found himself in Rome, tasked not with winning battles, but with rebuilding the Republic. The skills that made him a legendary general were now useless. Worse, they were dangerous. You can't run a Senate with gut instinct. You can't build a stable society with battlefield commands. The stakes were no longer a single battle, but the future of an entire civilization. He had to stop being a warrior and become an architect. You generate maximum market share as fast as possible, building a story for a quick sale. It's a high-stakes gamble. The third path is scaling. This is different. This is about achieving dramatic, exponential growth. It's not about making the perfect product anymore. It's about building a machine that can deliver a good enough product to a massive audience, consistently and profitably. It requires a total shift in focus from product to system. The hero with bloodshot eyes at that bar, he thought he was scaling, but he was just growing his own workload. His indecision was going to burn him and his company to the ground. You have to ask yourself, right now, what does your calendar from last week say? How many hours were spent on making the product better versus building a system to deliver it to more people? Be honest, because scaling is not the same as growth. The archetype we're all taught to worship. But I saw something else. I saw a man who had built his own prison. His eyes were bloodshot. He wasn't a leader. He was a bottleneck in a human suit. He wasn't scaling a company. He was just scaling his own exhaustion. He hadn't made the choice about what game he was actually playing. You have to choose. The first path is growth. This is linear. You focus on making a better product, becoming more profitable. You build a fantastic, sustainable business like a world-class artisan. A man named Jim, a master guitar maker, chose this path. He told me his personal stakes were simple, his craft and his peace of mind. He chose them over market domination. It's a noble choice. The second path is flipping. This is quick. Your goal isn't to build a sustainable company. It's to build a desirable asset. I was the hero. I was the visionary. I was the founder who could solve any problem with a gut decision and a force of will. My internal monologue was a constant loop. I am the one, suffocating the company I love. That night, staring at that flatlining graph, I didn't feel like a visionary. I felt like a fraud. And I knew something had to die. Either the company died, or the founder in me did. You see this founder everywhere. I saw him just a few years back at a conference bar in Austin. The air was buzzing with the sound of people pitching, networking, promising to change the world. In the corner, a founder was holding court. He was bragging, but it sounded more like a confession. He said, 110 hours last week. Slept at the office 3 nights. If I'm not there, it all falls apart. The people around him nodded, impressed. They saw a hero, a warrior. I know the cliff you're standing on, because I've fallen from it. And I'm here to show you the way across. Welcome to the Architect's Choice, Chapter 1. The title of this chapter is The Hero with Bloodshot Eyes. I remember the exact moment I realized my brilliant instincts were about to bankrupt me. It was 3:16 in the morning. The only light in the office was the cold blue glow of my monitor. The only sound was the hum of the server rack. On the screen was a cash flow chart. It was supposed to be our victory lap. We had just landed our biggest client. Revenue was spiking. But this chart, this honest chart, didn't look like a rocket ship. It looked like a heartbeat flatlining. A cold tightness bloomed behind my sternum. Every win was followed by an operational fire. Every heroic all-night session I pulled to fix a problem just created two more somewhere else. 90% of founders who try to scale their companies fail. They don't fail because of the market, not because of their product, not because of their funding. They fail because the very person who built the engine becomes the one throwing sand in its gears. The air around them grows thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation, and they don't even notice until it's too late. By then, your company is already suffocating. By 2028, hundreds of visionary companies will have died this exact death, and you are standing in line to be one of them. I promise you this. By the end of this audio, you will understand how to fire your inner founder and hire a new leader in their place, one who can build something that lasts. My name is Alex Thorne. This isn't a book of theories. It's a roadmap born from a disaster. My disaster.